Alright, welcome to the vBrownBag Tech Talks at vForum Sydney 2015. My name is Jeff Wong. I'm a virtualization storage specialist. This is where I blog and my Twitter handle. So today I'm just going to talk about Horizon View on vSAN. And what are the success tips that I can share with you based on my experience and what I've gone through. So hopefully this will help some of you guys out there. So a bit of disclaimer here. Just want to stress here that the contents of my presentation and discussion here are my own personal opinion and not a representation of my employer or any product vendor. And the goal of this presentation is to give you high-level tips on how to be successful running vSAN for a Horizon View workload. And this is again purely based on my personal experience and may or may not be applicable to your environment, so understand it and apply it accordingly. So why vSAN for my Horizon View environment, you ask, and why not any other storage solutions? Obviously the use case is very dependent on your business requirements. So for me, it was the goal, the task and the goal that was given to me was to find a design that will address the fast-paced change and the constant growth of the view environment that I manage and design. And like everything else, it needs to be cost effective, and it needs to allow for small but very, very frequent changes with small budget allocations. So I need to find a solution that meets that sort of business change, and these are the various reasons why vSAN was chosen. And cost. So when we're talking cost, we obviously did a comparison with traditional full block arrays, and obviously the conclusion we came up with was it's a lot cheaper doing vSAN. This was also primarily due to the fact that we were able to reuse hardware, and the second point is to do with licensing, which drives the cost down as well. I had access to a Horizon Enterprise license, which vSAN is included. So if you are Horizon Enterprise license, there is a compelling reason for you to consider that. Scalability is key for me. I need an environment where I could scale easily by the way that I scale by adding compute nodes and memory nodes, the same way as I can scale storage. So being a hyper-converged solution, it fits perfect. Secondly, another reason is support. So support would be a one-stop shop. Being already a VMware sort of VDI solution, naturally vSAN would be an easy solution to adopt if I ever needed support. It's easy, it's one call away. The other reason is DR. So because of I originally put in this solution in a DR environment, then it was a cost-effective solution to stand up a small environment without having to have a very, very large outlay. So because of what I've learned in DR and what I can do in DR, and I can replicate that into production now. So some of the considerations I like to get straight on, just a bit of expectation here is I'm assuming the audience here has some level of Horizon View knowledge and vSAN knowledge. So I'll jump straight into the points. First thing is, for your vSAN to perform well and successful, VSA, View Storage Accelerator, or commonly known as CBRC, is a must. Don't even think about not turning it on. It can make or break your performance of your vSAN if you don't turn it on. It has absolutely lots of benefits by turning CBRC or VSA on. Another tip is that enable when you create your pools, because if you enable it after creating the pool, it might not get enabled properly. And you can check that out by checking if there is a disk digest file within the day's store. So very, very important thing here. Another is I would highly recommend if you were adopting vSAN, you should be running View 5.3 and above. It has native support for vSAN as it will apply the storage policies automatically. If you're not in at least version 5.3, then you might struggle a little bit and you may not get the storage policies and the benefits of vSAN. Third important one, which I think that a lot of people don't understand or recognize, is to consider using an FTT of more than one for your replica disk if you're running link clones. Understand the majority of View deployment people run link clones, one shape or form, whether it's persistent or non-persistent, which relies heavily on replica disks. And if you increase your FTT of your replica disks, you are fundamentally not only increasing your redundancy levels, you are also increasing performance because reads on vSAN are distributed equally in parallel. That's, I think, one very key performance tweak that many people don't understand. It does take a little bit more storage space because you're effectively creating more mirror, but I think it's key. Another tip is in vSAN 5.5 to watch out for component limits. You can easily exceed it, especially with link clones in larger environments. So just watch out for that. In vSAN 6.0 and above, it's less of a concern because the component limits are a lot higher. Right, so one key note to watch out for. Lastly, within Horizon View is RVC would be your best friend. No RVC commands for vSAN in and out because that is fundamental and very, very important for troubleshooting and performance tweaks and to do your health checks. With the emergence of vSAN health check in 6.0 and above, and especially in 6.1 with the health check built in to the web console, I think that's less of an importance, but there's still a lot that you can do in using RVC commands for troubleshooting and deep dive sort of troubleshooting and changes. So 6.1 also has VROps package now available, so that would help. So I want to get into hardware and sizing now. This is a 15-minute session, so I won't go to too much detail, but VCG, 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 the VMware Compatibility Guide, that's a must. And I can't stress enough, because if you ever run into issues and you have to log a call with any vendor at all, whether it's hardware or from VMware, first thing they will check is if your hardware and configuration from firmware levels, driver levels, is it in the VCG? If it's not, that's the first thing you need to fix before any further troubleshooting can be done. It probably isn't even supported if it's not in the VCG. Secondly, which is my personal favorite, I personally think that in the Horizon or VDI workload, scale out is always better than scaling up. And the reason is these few sort of traits. When we're talking performance, when you scale out in vSAN, you get faster, you get better performance effectively, because you're effectively creating more disk groups or putting more spindles. That's easy. So rather than trying to put create very big disk groups with lots of storage, or some compute-only nodes, scatter it out as much as you can. At the same time, you're helping with availability. The more disks you have, the better your availability, the more disk failures you can afford, the more disk groups you can afford. So in other words, you're distributing your failure domains. Recoverability. So the more hardware you have, the more you scale out, the quicker it is to recover. I'll give you an example. If you lose a disk group, if the disk group is very big, it will take you a long time to rebuild the data that's lost in that disk group, or a disk for that matter. So if you distribute that to as many smaller disk groups as you can, you effectively making your recoverability a lot faster and easier. Manageability. So with the faster sort of rebuild activity, you're effectively making your maintenance windows a lot smaller because you can put nodes in maintenance mode a lot quicker for whatever reason, whether it's patching or hardware replacement, etc. If you can help it, at least four or more nodes for various reasons, for the same reasons that I've mentioned: performance, availability, recoverability, and manageability reasons. And when you're sizing for a node, just remember to take into account CPU and memory overhead that vSAN will take up within your CPU cycles of your hypervisor. So as a general guide, allow for about 10%, but that depends on your workload, of course. And lastly, just this is probably nothing new, but allow for peak, logon storms, boot storms, and very importantly, don't forget for growth, because most VDI environments I know of is always growing, and I don't think so I've heard of any shrinking. So always allow for growth, because if you don't, you might have a perfectly sized environment, but it could eat into your buffer very, very quickly. Lastly, I want to touch on networking, because networking is a very, very important integral part of vSAN, because everything runs through the Ethernet network. Personally, at a minimum, use 2 10 gigs. Although 1 gig uplinks are supported, I wouldn't even bother with it, especially in a Horizon View environment. It is supported probably mainly because of robo deployments or small deployments, but in a VDI environment, don't bother due to recoverability reasons as well. When you have to rebuild, when you have strong rebuild activity, it will saturate your link because you're also pushing through not just storage traffic, but you're also pushing through VM traffic. If you're sharing uplinks, use network I/O control to prioritize vSAN traffic. There's plenty of articles out there that will show you how to. I'm not going to go into details because it's a very high level. And watch out for spanning tree updates. That's probably an oldie, but a very, very goodie. Spanning tree updates can ruin your vSAN connectivity and performance. In the past, management networks were prone to spanning tree updates because, but these days it's not so apparent anymore due to a great TCP protocol and quick recoverability. But because vSAN relies heavily on multicast, spanning tree updates can ruin and disrupt your vSAN network. Always use a dedicated VLAN, and if cost permits, I would suggest using dedicated switch just to avoid any interruption or any overlaps. Lastly, I would suggest enable IGMP snooping with Query because that's fundamental to control your multicast traffic. So with this, hopefully I'm giving you very, very high level tips to be successful in your vSAN environment. Everything I mentioned here is something I've learned, and it's key to make sure you get it right, as it will make or break your vSAN environment, especially in a Horizon View deployment. Thanks.